Tonight I'm going to be talking about Nietzsche on truth and lies. But before I start discussing his views on truth and lies, I would like to tell you a story about the painting that I actually attached to my page on meetup.com. So I don't know if somebody's seen it. Who has seen it, fine. Who didn't, I'll just remind you. The painting is actually the one from Jean-Léon Gérôme, painted in 1896, and it's called Naked Beauty. So in that painting we have a beautiful naked woman coming out of the well, but it's quite shocked. And original story says that it actually comes from Democritus, which is a Greek philosopher. For him, truth could not be discovered and will remain in the whale. So that's the original story. But there is another story attached to this painting, which I found very interesting. And it has it this way. In a hot summer day, Beauty and Lie were walking through the forest. Since it was very hot, the Lie proposed to Beauty to have a bath somewhere. Beauty was a bit reluctant, but then she accepted it. They found a well, so they went into the well, naked, both of them. But after a few minutes, the Lie jumped out of the well, grabbed the clothes that Beauty left, and ran away. So Beauty was shocked. What happened? Why did she run away? She comes out of the well just to discover that the clothes are gone. Her clothes had disappeared. So she understood that the Lie has stolen her clothes. And this is why she is so much in shock. So she went back to the well, and it never came out. At the same time, the Lie, dressed up in the Beauty's clothes, wandered among people, presenting itself as truth. And this is, in a nutshell, the story of tonight's event. So we have the Lie constantly in front of us, looks like truth, but is actually not. We can't avoid, again, to go back to The Birth of Tragedy, Nietzsche's first book, written in 1872. I just need to remind you again about the importance of that book, in which Nietzsche actually criticized his rational-only approach to redemption of life. So for him, we are not only rational beings, we have something else. We have instincts, we have passions, we have high feelings. And Nietzsche wants us to be aware of that constantly. Because as you will see, this is where our happiness actually is. Not necessarily in rational only way of life. So in The Birth of Tragedy, Nietzsche introduces two deities, Apollo as a metaphor of measure, harmony, beauty, individuality, but also reason, and an opposing deity, which is Dionysus. And this is the god of wine. This is the god of passion, of sexual frenzy. So those two gods are actually metaphors of those two most powerful weapons that we have. Reason on one side and passions and instinct on the other. In the book, Nietzsche clearly explains that none of them help us in avoiding suffering, but the only way out is actually the amalgamation of both, the fusion of Apollonian and Dionysian elements, which he finds out is only possible to go through the tragic illusion which is found in Attic tragedy. So I'm just hoping that this would provoke you to read that book, which is amazing. We spent quite a lot of time talking about it in previous talks. But then Nietzsche continues, and in that book actually he says that, and this is very important, he says only as an aesthetic phenomenon that existence and the world are eternally justified. So you can read existence and the world as life. So only as an aesthetic phenomenon, that's very important, only. Life can be justified. So what it means, only as an aesthetic phenomenon. What else is there? Obviously Nietzsche thinks about moral phenomena. And as moral phenomenon, life cannot be justified. That Schopenhauer has proven and Christian morality has proven. So only as an aesthetic phenomenon. Now we're going to come back to that aesthetic phenomenon. In 1873, so 1 year after he wrote The Birth of Tragedy, he writes a famous essay called On Truth and Lie in Non-Moral Sense. And that essay I found extremely important, not only to understand better The Birth of Tragedy, but also to understand much better Nietzsche's later development, especially in human ode to human and gay science. So Nietzsche starts his essay. He says, once upon a time, in an out-of-the-way corner of the universe, there was a star upon which human beasts invented knowledge. So we see that he thinks it was extremely an arrogant thing to do. And humans impose themselves as a complete owners of the universe. They appropriated the universe. They gave the value to the universe, and they decided about everything. They measured everything. Everything is decided by humans. It was extremely an arrogant thing to do, to happen. That was obviously a deception. Deception that humans needed in order to give themselves certain room to maneuver, to make something out of their lives. But it was, in essence, it was a deception. And as we know, as Kant has taught, and Nietzsche explained that in The Birth of Tragedy, the thing in itself, or noumenon, cannot be understood. We can't get there, because it's completely out of our cognitive abilities. So this deception, this appropriation of the world, Nietzsche saw as an extremely arrogant happening. And he says, how miserable, how aimless, how arbitrary human intellect looks within nature. So now in the middle, in the mixture of that, of those deceptions, something happened. The drive for truth happened. Nietzsche wonders, how come that we have created the drive for truth? What was the cause for it? And then he gives us an answer. In the beginning, he said, people lived in the war of everyone against everyone else. As Hobbes, Bellum, omni contra omnes. And if they realize that if they continue living like that, the species will disappear, because everybody is everybody's enemy. So they decided to come together, and as Nietzsche said, to live in the herd. In order to do that, they needed some peace treaty. And that peace treaty was actually the cause of creation of the truth. They needed something that would be legal and binding to everyone. They created truth. So, obviously, for the correspondence view, truth can only be created on the basis of language. And Nietzsche again asks, is language really the best expression of all realities? In order to answer the question, he goes into word first. And he says, what is the word? A word is, he says, a sound, copying sound of a nerve stimulus. So we first have a nerve stimulus, and then we give it a name to it. But that nerve stimulus is a metaphor. We don't know what the thing is, we only see the thing. And then we put another metaphor. We give the name to an image. And this is why he says, for example, we decide what mammals are. And then we look at an animal and we say, oh, that's a camel over there. And then we say, oh, camel is a mammal. Look, there is a mammal. But it's nothing to do with species, it's nothing to do with that particular animal. It's just our view and our imposition of double metaphor, which is metaphor of the metaphor. So we have first metaphor as a nerve stimulus, and then second metaphor as copy in sound. Now Nietzsche says, okay, we have metaphor, we have the words explained, but what's happening with concepts which we constantly use, especially philosophers and scientists? We can't function without concepts. So what is the concept? The concept is basically equation of unequal thing. If we say, for example, a leaf, we strip off every single individual leaf, their qualities, their size, color, shape, and we create a concept that we call leaf. But that has nothing to do with reality, again. And this concept, basically what it does is devalues every individual thing. And it becomes something perfect. And therefore, everything else in nature looks imperfect. So when we say leaf, we think we know what we're talking about. But it's not the case. And that's nothing perfect about that concept. The perfection is actually in individual leaves. But we don't want that. So we create a role of concepts. So why is that important, says Nietzsche? Why concepts? Because creating concepts, we have created a very, very different world. We have created a world with classes, with castes, with subordination, with dominance. We have created a universal world, which is more regulative and at the same time also an imperative world. Without concept and our conceptual abilities, that wouldn't happen. Now we can see the development, how Nietzsche sees the development of language. We have words, and then we have concepts, and then we have some product out of it, but then he goes back to the truth and says, okay, if this is the way that the language represents truth to us, so what is then truth? And the famous answer to that is that truth is actually a movable host of metaphors, metonyms and metamorphosms, which are actually human relations that have been embellished, transferred, and intensified over time. But at the same time, they have lost any sensus force. And he says truths are illusions that we have forgotten are illusions. And people start believing in them as they are fixed, canonical, and binding. So this is his definition of truth. It's very complicated, it's very complex. And at the same time, it is a theoretical definition, obviously. But then what that has to do with reality, how that influences, does that influence the world at all? And it does. And Nietzsche says influences the life of people, nations, cultures, empires. So definition of the truth is as such that illusion of illusion, that we've forgotten is illusion, that can change complete history. For example, he says, Romans have divided their conceptual heaven with straight lines into different spheres. And then they have appointed a god to every sphere. And that god has brought us some truth. And they believe in them. Now how can we say that they were wrong? Their religion, that polytheistic religion, helped them to become Roman Empire. They lasted 1,000 years. It will probably never happen anything like that again. So it did matter. Although it may have been a lie, it did work. So this is what Nietzsche wants us to think about that. Remember that lie and beauty in the well, and what happened? That picture, that story. But doing that, Nietzsche says, is the same as you hide something in the garden, because it's man-made truth. You hide something in the garden and you pretend that you're looking for it. And then one day you find it and you're so excited and happy. But who do you praise? You praise yourself. Because you know it's there. It's your discovery of yourself. You didn't discover anything new. And he said in that conceptual world, this is where philosophers, he obviously criticizes metaphysicians, this is where philosophers and scientists thrive. And they wouldn't wonder to get out of it. Because if they do, they may find themselves talking to an insect or a bird and finding out that their world is completely different. Now the question that arises is, which world is, or which truth is more correct? But it's completely meaningless, because there is no one out there to say your understanding of truth and your understanding of the world is more correct than this. That goes further. That anthropomorphism, that metamorphosis of the world into a man goes further. And we have also invented something that we call natural laws. How can be laws in nature, says Nietzsche? Who is the lawgiver? So there are two possible lawgivers. Either it is a god, which is not, or man, of course. They are our laws that we have imposed upon nature. He said there is no regularity in nature. This is what you're trying to do. So you find something and you say, oh, that's the natural law of nature. But he says nature is chaos. There's nothing regular, nothing accidental. These are our words, our truth, our logic that we impose on something which is in front of us, and which he calls necessities. Right? I have to remind you what rational man is. In the Birth of Tragedy, we had three types of illusion. One that Nietzsche criticized is Socratic illusion, or scientific illusion. And that was an illusion that, obviously Socrates planted it, that knowledge is a virtue. And that knowledge, reason, can help us penetrate the secret of the being, thinking itself. But not only to penetrate and understand, but also to change. So obviously that is not something that Nietzsche likes. And the problem with that Socratic illusion, Socratic optimism as he calls, is that scientists find the most of excitement in their search for truth, not in the truth itself, because they never get it. They believe that they will get it. But obviously that belief that we can get to truth implicates illusion. And this is what science wants to eliminate in the first place. So if you admit that illusion is necessary, even if in your Socratic optimism, in your rational superpower, then you are not solving the problem, because illusion is there. You believe in the truth. And he says, the most honest of all scientists, Lessing, said exactly that excitement wasn't in discovering the truth, but in the belief and the search for truth. So that rational man, Nietzsche says, creates his world in concepts. He is not intuitive. He clings to the scaffolding of concepts. He hides inside, and he is safe there. But what he does actually, he's just trying to ward off all misfortune that can happen to him, without ever reaching any happiness. It resembles modern man, isn't it? Opposite to him, there is another illusion. There is another man that Nietzsche called intuitive man. And we spoke about it earlier on, or he says a lot about it in the Birth of Tragedy. And this is the man that is drunken by beauty. He loves art. He enjoys every moment. And although he wants to ward off misfortune of life and suffering, he still reaches that happiness occasionally. So intuitive man finds happiness. But Nietzsche says he suffers more. And he suffers more profoundly, and he suffers more frequently, because he cannot use conceptual power of a rational man and predict misfortune. So he says he keeps falling in the same ditch over and over again. And he says there was a time when these two men lived next to each other. And with this, he finishes the essay, and I finish my lecture.